What's up, and welcome back to Nowstalgia Pod, giving you your weekly look at what's going on in pop culture. My name is Pat Sheehan, joined by my trusty co-host Dave Martin Swagger. Dave, what's going on, man?
Blackpink coming back, baby. Born Pink.
Great name.
September. We don't know what day, but excited to talk about that. And we're going to talk about some other K pop groups I like less than Blackpink in a little bit.
Well, I mean, it's hard to like many K-pop groups as much as Blackpink because they're just excellent. But K-pop just absolutely dominating. If you saw any of J Hope's fandom
Yeah.
this weekend at Lollapalooza, pretty unreal. The sights and people lining up like 12 hours before to see him. It's just nuts. So
Hobie
uh,
Palooza, baby.
we're we're gonna be talking about that soon. But if you like listening to all of the stuff you like talking about, such as Batgirl or Paper Girls or some girls who dropped albums this weekend, hit that
Yeah.
subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. We're team girls, I guess, out here. But we uh we wanted to start with Batgirl because there was some news that dropped right before we started recording that the DCU, DC Comics, which has been developing a, I guess, like small screen Batgirl movie planned to be dropped on HBO Max, just
They already
decided,
made it.
yeah, it's pretty much already done. Has been delayed a few times because of COVID and a couple other production issues. $90 million down the drain. They're like, this movie just doesn't work. We're gonna scrap this. What?
Yeah.
What? Dave, can you make sense of this for me?
Well, we know since Warner Brothers came under new management with the merger with Discovery, new leadership at the top, David Zaslav. He's been making changes about how they do business. The J.J. Abrams thing did not come to fruition due to its price tag. Certain things got canceled. Made for Love, for example, on HBO Max. The belt is being tightened, and they said that the blockbuster on streaming strategy is not a model that they're going to continue. It doesn't work, which honestly makes some sense. You have make these big expensive movies, put them in the theaters, get some money back. We've always talked about the questionable economics of expensive movies somehow justifying their costs solely through streaming. It's weird calculus, doesn't really make any sense. That being said, you already made this Batgirl movie. Why are you shelving it? I don't understand. It's like you already spent the 90 million. Yes, that's too expensive moving forward. But right now, you already have this movie you made. Why not put it out? Okay, you don't want to spend money marketing it. You really just want to write this off. It just seems strange, especially for the DC strategy, which has been more or less to take cool ideas and just make stuff and don't really worry about some ham-fisting continuity. I mean, you have Leslie Grace, after In the Heights, obviously her strong music career, cast as Batgirl, sounded pretty fun casting. Michael Keaton back as
Mhm.
Batman in this, like he will be in the Flash as well. Directed by Dylan Bilal, who did Bad Boys 3, did some Miss Marvel, like in demand rising directors. It just seems like a weird weird move, and like I think some people are trying to rationalize it as like maybe it's just really bad and they don't want to sully the brand and spend any more money. But I just have a hard
Sully the
time believe.
brand.
I have a hard time believing that. It's like you know Sony can put out like Venom 2 and make tons of money and not worry about how it's received. Like Batgirl is gonna be successful. It's just odd. I understand they have a new strategy about how they're gonna go about greenlighting projects and funding stuff. Cool, but this is already paid for,
Yeah.
and you can't rationalize to me that the write off is somehow more valuable to them than adding something new to the DCEU because they don't make movies as quickly as Marvel does. You might as well put some of these things out when you have it in front of you. I don't get it.
Yeah, the Sully the brand thing is funny because when one of your better movies, Aquaman, can be put out with something we've talked about a lot, but some of the worst CGI at certain points that we've seen in a major film like this, it's like, what is the brand that you're really like working towards here. Now, I do have one theory, bit of a conspiracy theory. DC obviously known for having a rabid fan base, and the Snyder Cut is the best example of this. You know, people wanting to
Hmm.
see the movies and the way that they're made. Do you think this is like a sly play to get that fan base riled up again to get some momentum behind this thing?
Oh my gosh, I don't know, man, because those fans have open distrust of Warner Brothers through several administrations, several turns of management for many reasons. Um, they never made a second Superman movie, for example. There's
Hmm.
lots of things that just never happened and piss people off for hardcore fans anyway. So, but this is just like a strictly business move that just doesn't make rational sense to me. I don't quite get it. Meanwhile, probably full steam ahead with The Flash coming out, despite the myriad issues with Ezra Miller's life and public persona and things of that nature. But that was a movie that was always going to come out in theaters, so we can fit it in the budget. It's just strange to me. I don't get it.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me either. I guess also like in the scheme of things, like how much more money is it going to cost to finish this at this point? You know, it's not totally shot. They have a few more things that they have to like wrap up supposedly, and they're saying that they just can't make it work. Right? That's what they keep saying. We just can't make the movie make sense. Is it going to cost another 20 million? Like your 90 million down the drain, is it really going to be that big of a difference between 110 million and 90 million at this point? Like that's dropping the bucket in a lot of senses for
And
these
yeah, and then again,
companies.
just put it on HBO Max so you can self advertise it, and do
Hmm.
like I don't know, a really really modest P&A. It's like
Yeah,
I don't know. I mean, you already have in a sense a bit of a fan base expectation that something would be there on streaming because that's where Snyder Cut, of course,
hmm,
debuted. They don't want to do that moving forward. Fine, but like I don't know. I feel like it's not that crazy of a lift. Just seems like an odd move to me.
seems like an odd move to me as well. It doesn't really make sense. I hope we see it eventually. I feel like we will, but I just don't know what it's gonna look like at that point. So,
I hope
they
people
they
talk, man. Start talking.
the production company has said that Sony has said that they do like the director, they do like the star, they want to keep working with them around Batgirl. So I assume we'll see something, but I don't know. Feels like just another weird move for DC.
We'll do some reshoots with the Flash, and there'll be a Flashpoint moment where we see Leslie Grace's
Oh my
Batgirl.
god. Well, whatever. Has the Ezra Miller saga ended? Did he like get help finally? Like,
I don't know. I
I feel like I haven't
there's
saw
so
the
many
news.
headlines, it's hard to keep up, but
Yeah,
things are starting to go towards a more criminal uh
yeah,
direction, unfortunately. So um I think that'll be a bigger topic point when it comes
yeah.
time to promote the Flash when you do that without the star of the movie, obviously. So more to come on that.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna pivot from DC news to NewJeans, the K-pop wonderkins who just dropped their first EP titled "NewJeans First EP, New Jeans." I hate the album title. I wish it was just New Jeans, but it's fine. It's fine. And they, this is a new group that was put together by BTS's production company, um, Adore from Hype Group, and they dropped Attention last week. I think it was at midnight, and within like 15 hours, had 1.3 million views.
Hmm. there's,
Big,
there's
big fan base for this group
there's a
already.
lot of subs on the HYBE YouTube channels because of BTS and also 17. So yeah, this label can introduce somebody with very limited promo, and
Hmm.
next thing you know, they're just a full-on entity. And here they are, a five-member female K-pop group that more or less came out of nowhere to people not in the know. And um,
Hmm.
I think it is kind of cool to see that. I was doing a little bit more reading into like how that happened, and HYBE has many silos as an entertainment company, and we know like Big Hit Music is where BTS of course is from, and 17 has their own silo, and this new label in the conglomeration Adore is where New Jeans seem to fit in. And also I think notably that they are kind of the brainchild of Min Hee Jin, who was the former creative director at SM for many popular blockbuster K-pop groups, and had recently moved to HYBE a few years ago. And this seems to be her brainchild, you could say. Um, and these five members all seem to come from auditions recently, which makes sense. Pretty traditional way to make a K-pop group. But what did you think of the music itself? We got only four songs, and
Hmm.
three of them had been out before the EP itself came out this week, with the fourth song, "Cookie," coming out along with it. So, what did you think of these tracks from a brand new group that is notably younger? These members are all age 14 to 17, all teenagers here. Little,
Yeah.
definitely brand new.
I think there's a lot of potential. This is me doing like the shit sandwich, right? A lot of potential for this group. I think there's a couple of songs that I like more than others. I think Attention is a clear standout, but I just think overall this is all pretty half baked in my opinion. It's just like not super refined. We've been listening to some K-pop records recently that just are so much more interesting production wise and so much more ear grabbing. We're going to be talking about one in a second that I don't even know if I liked more necessarily than this music, but at least was more attention grabbing than what we got
Definitely.
here. It all just felt pretty bland to me. What did you think about this first EP?
Yeah, I thought "Attention" is definitely my favorite song as well. It has that light, that summery
Mm,
aesthetic feeling. You watch the music video, the dancing actually looks pretty effortless. You know,
yeah.
who knows? Maybe they're gonna have a long career here. Despite a kind of odd name, odd concept. A new pair of jeans, don't be blue. It's like, you can write it. I don't know if you can say it. To quote
Well,
Alec
apparently
Guinness.
they're also trying to be as big as the gene. Like this amazing invention. And it's like, oh, I don't know if I ever would have made that
I
connection
mean,
unless you
it's
said it.
it's kind of weird to put that much pressure on your teenage group when you're also
Yeah.
the label that has fucking BTS, the
Right.
biggest band in the world, one of the biggest bands ever.
Yeah. Insane.
Regardless, yeah, I thought "Attention" was my favorite, but like the lightness and the summariveness also just kind of pales in comparison to more veteran release, where we heard Nion's solo debut earlier this
Mhm.
year, which obviously she has a long career in Toys to this point. But that was like really catching from the performance side of things alongside that production. Whereas I don't know if the performances really shine too much on any of these New Jeans songs. It's really more about the production. You go on to Hype Boy, which I do see myself as something of a hype boy myself, but not exactly a song that, like, the performance is not that interesting. It's the production that's interesting because it's a cool match of like house music and reggaeton. What's it's called, like mamba tone or something. I forget the name.
Yep.
And that's cool. I don't really hear that too much in all the K-pop music I listen to, but like I think apart from the chorus and the general tempo of the song, there's not a whole lot to it either.
Yeah, Hype Boy didn't really catch my ear. I think the other song on here that really caught my ear was Hurt, mostly
Mhm,
because of just the way that they sang that song. That hook, I don't wanna be the one to get hurt. It's just like
mhm,
so catchy. And like that's the sort of thing where I'm like, even though the production is pretty like easy listening, like really like lo-fi hip hop type of sound,
mhm.
it does feel like there's potential for that sort of hook and that sort of like sticky songwriting to be something where we're gonna just hear better things from them. And again, like
Mhm.
you said, they're very young. So I think if we're taking a few of these songs out and we're like, there's potential here, this is just the first thing we're gonna be hearing much, much better down the road.
Totally. Yeah, and then Cookie, there's I can't really speak to the size of this, but there was some backlash to the lyrics of Cookie, which it's sung mainly in Korean, but if you read the meaning, uh, it seems a bit suggestive, a bit innuendo filled, which these are not songs that these women wrote themselves, and they all are minors still.
Mhm.
So bit questionable. You hope the K-pop industry doesn't swallow these women up at such a young age. We only can hope. But yeah, I'm curious to see how quickly they get pushed forward, and like when the next drop comes out, we've seen all kinds of things where art groups really slow play it, right? Blackpink very famously, but then other acts, EP after EP comes out, and then they just keep getting that momentum. So
Mhm.
it's hard to really know because they've only been an entity for like 2.5 weeks, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to say, but I think there's a lot of potential here. I also think the singing just is really strong. Like they have
Yeah,
really great voices, so there's a lot here. It's just not
yeah.
refined yet. So better things to come for New Jeans, a group we'll be keeping track of as they go. But why don't we stay in the K-pop realm and talk about ATEEZ
Mm,
dropping their newest? I guess this is an EP technically, right?
yes,
Uh,
their ninth EP, Korean EP overall, first release of 2022. And ATEEZ is the first group we're talking about from KQ Entertainment, one of the smaller K-pop labels, not one of those big four. And they're really the marquee act for KQ Entertainment, one of their biggest group by far. But this is our first time talking about them, a 8-piece boy group that debuted back in 2018. Again, this is their ninth EP. There's a lot of material out there, and they've toured in the U.S. before. They had a world tour coming up later in the year. Experienced group,
yep.
but not nearly as famous, of course, as the more noteworthy boy groups, obviously in K-pop. But yeah, what'd you think of ATEEZ? This was my first time really diving into them. I'd known the name for a little bit, but what did you think of this quick EP, which has a crazy name, by the way? What is the name of this EP?
The World EP1 movement. Uh, yeah, they have a lot of interesting names. Zero Fever Epilogue, Zero Fever Part
Right.
Two.
Like so all
Uh,
these trilogies and like series of
yeah,
projects in succession, the way I understand it. But yeah, what do you think of this latest entry, which is like the start of a new creative era?
yeah. Same as you. This is my first time really diving into their music. I was really struck by just how many similarities I heard or how much I heard them trying to be like some artists from the United States. Like
Hmm.
it felt very heavily influenced by a lot of the weekend's most recent stuff. It felt like,
Ah, Dawn
which
FM, you say?
yeah, Dawn FM, but just like that, even like some of that stuff he was doing before that, where it's like this like housey, trancy, like
Mhm.
sing songy, kind of leaning into rap at points. And I thought it worked to like varying effect. There were a few songs on here I really was like, this is interesting. I just also don't think the music that they're making on here with this really like overproduced EDM is really
Yeah.
like in my zone of like enjoyable music. So
Mhm.
I was like, I think there's some good stuff here, but it's just not really for me. And even if you look at some of these names like Cyberpunk or like Gorilla, it's like they're definitely going for like a certain type of like like persona or like feeling to
Mhm.
this.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if it really jived with me. What about you?
Yeah, I'd say Cyberpunk definitely aptly named. Very
Yeah.
bass heavy, crazy drums on that one. Even the beginning, Propaganda, which is really just an intro track, it starts out like it's the soundtrack to Tron. And then towards the
Yeah.
end, there, these crazy electric guitars come out of nowhere. And I'm like, holy shit, this is really cool. You don't hear like big guitars on
Mhm.
K pop all that often. But then those guitars don't really come back too much on the rest of the EP, which disappointed me. Um, my favorite song by far was the lead single with the video Gorilla, just because that's like a true bona fide K-pop rap song. They are
Mhm.
really going for it. The energy is high. The flow I think is pretty good on that, and the hook I think just has like really big energy. But there is a really bass heavy electronic production underneath all of that. Um, I think that's where it works the best. Some of the other songs though I don't like it quite as much.
Yeah, I think Cyberpunk actually is one of the tracks that probably stood out to me most, just in terms of like pure enjoyability.
Mhm.
Um, it is definitely crazy, but I really like the way that they kind of like ride the flow on that, and like it like builds up so quickly, and then will like drop out, but just build up like right away again. It's like very propulsive. The song for sure.
Mhm.
And I also liked the da 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 da
Mhm.
do 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 do. Very catchy around the chorus, even though obviously I didn't understand the words or what they
Yeah.
were singing about. Um, yeah, and then like kind of looking like just through here, like I feel like each song had like interesting aspects to it. Like where do I go is just so like trappy sounding.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
it sounds almost kind of like Skrillex produced in some sense, but like
Uh-huh.
I just don't know. Like I just didn't find myself wanting to like run this one back right away. It's definitely different though, which I appreciate cuz like while you said that what was it? The Ring was it that was the most like
Gorilla.
traditional Gorilla,
Mhm.
sorry.
Yeah.
Gorilla was the most traditional K-pop sounding rap song. Um I just feel like we haven't listened to any other albums like this yet from K-pop. So I was like, "Ah,
Yeah.
this is I'm glad that they're trying stuff. That's really cool."
Totally. Yeah, I think the last track, New World, I thought stood out to me as well because the guitars show up back once again there at the very last song. And I'm
Mhm.
like, oh, this sounds really cool. And then, they're kind of like singing and rapping over that like heavy production. I think it really works there. And the chorus specifically, I think, is like really epic because it's really being belted out as the
Mm.
guitars are like really going. And it's like, oh my God, this is like an amazing piece of the song. By far the best part of the song. So like,
Very cinematic for sure that
yes,
song.
exactly, exactly. Very cyberpunk. So
Yeah.
I mean, shout out ATEEZ. I think this is there's definitely intentionality with this, and like
Mhm.
it's not exactly my favorite thing, but there is a lot of effort and there is a clear decision to try and make something outside of the mold, which I think is really appealing, and if the rapping is pretty good, like it is on Gorilla too, I do still have some time for it. So
Yeah,
definitely looking forward to
absolutely.
their next like full length album. I'm and I guess the next EPs or whatever with this too, this new era, we'll see if there's a progression to come with their next music.
Yeah, I assume we're probably going to get two more EPs. So we might be talking about them pretty soon.
Yeah.
We're going to put one of their tracks, probably Gorilla, onto our Nostalgia Best of 2022 playlist. So check that out on Spotify. Give it a follow. But Dave, let's keep it moving to the I don't know, I don't even know the princess, the like the heir apparent to indie pop in uh I don't know the music sphere. Maggie Rogers, the girl Wonder. You know,
Yeah.
I've already talked about Wonder Kid. We talked about Batgirl. Maggie Rogers kind of been tapped since her time at NYU as like the like next coming of pop since that like viral Pharrell video
Yeah.
dropped where he's listening to Alaska, and I guess like folk pop too was kind of like where she was at with Heard It in a Past Life. It was very like toned down, stripped back, but still like produced songs. And I think we both really liked Heard It in a Past Life. Felt like there's a lot of potential there. Haven't really heard a proper album from Maggie in a while. She's dropped some songs here and there and some collections of old tracks she's recorded, but we get Surrender finally dropping
Mhm.
this past Friday, and boy, I loved this record. I was just totally blown away by what we got here. It was like completely unexpected, this like turn, and I was really enthralled by it. How'd you feel about what we got on Surrender?
Yeah, I liked it a lot as well. Like you said, Maggie Rogers been tapped for success at the very least several
Mhm.
years ago now. She was Grammy nominated for Best New Artist a few Grammys ago.
I think she won,
Her,
right?
yeah, no, she didn't win.
She didn't win.
Heard It in a Past Life came out 3.5 years ago. It's a bit of a wait for someone who had all this hype, anticipation, and momentum. But I would like to commend her for really honing in on like a musical identity. Cut her hair short, pixie cut is in. And what did she do? She did not go to work with Jack Antonoff like all the other female ingenues of pop in the last 5 years. She did not do that. What an awesome choice. Did she go to another super producer? She did. She went to Kid Harpoon, who obviously was all over the Harry Styles album. Regardless, though, she didn't make an album that sounds like all the other albums. You know,
Nope.
no shots at those women, but I like that she did something different.
Mhm.
And not only did she do something different, but what she did was good. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. I wasn't expecting to think back on Alanis Morissette and Fiona Apple while listening
Mhm.
to the second Maggie Rogers album, but that's what I did.
Yep,
What a pleasant surprise.
100% agree. And I didn't really get Fiona Apple, but now that you say, I definitely see a lot of the influence. Alanis definitely came to mind for me, like pure Alanis Morissette influence, but also like Beck and Arcade Fire, and even like Dixie Chicks at points. And it's
Mhm.
like it, she brought in like real guitars for this. She brought in heavy drum production. She really like pushed her vocals from being this like pretty within like a certain zone like
Mm,
on her
yes.
in a past life to like pushing herself to the extremes at both ends. And I just loved all the chances she took, and she just sounds so much more confident on this record, right? She spent the pandemic with her family up in Maine, getting a master's in divinity from Harvard, and while working on
Sure.
her master's was writing this music. And I think some of the songs are a bit corny and has some strange lines to them, but I think other songs are just really well written and kind of show off her strong lyrical ability. Probably not a perfect record in my opinion, but just completely satisfied with everything here. And it just actually feels, and we talk about, at least I talk about this a lot, it just feels like Maggie kind of unlocked a piece of her artistry that she
Mm.
hadn't really shown before, and it feels like there's a lot more potential to get some really exciting stuff from her in the future. So, why don't we dig in more to what we really liked about the album? Any songs that jump off right off the bat for you?
Yeah, there's a bunch. I'd say the lead single "Want Font" is a good one.
Yeah.
Just a really catchy chorus. The drums there quite
Hmm.
noticeable as well. I think there's a lot of really good choruses
Yeah.
on this. I thought "Anywhere with You,"
Hmm.
um, the emotion really kind of comes out in that chorus. But I think that song actually the bridge is like the highlight for sure. "Shatter" has a huge chorus. Honey, though, might be my favorite chorus because there's like those really long notes from Maggie, like as she sings, that really brought me back to like Avril Lavigne, her early stuff,
Yeah.
and it's just cool to hear those touch points going through the album. But even I've Got a Friend, which is an acoustic track, that also has a pretty strong chorus. It really feels
Yep.
like the choruses to me stood out, and shout out Maggie for co-writing all these songs with Kid Harpoon as well as co-producing all of them. Very much in control of this album, and to have this many like I think really sticky choruses that don't all sound the same, I think is
Hmm.
quite commendable.
Yeah, Honey is. I'm really glad you pointed that one out. Like the Avril Lavigne, like Alanis of it all, it really comes through in that song. Not only those like really long notes that she holds around the chorus, but the way that she sings them, she's almost like screeching kind of in them, and she has this like almost like new order, drum production on that, where it's just kind of like swirling underneath everything. Really cool. Want actually reminded me a lot of Beck. The song E Pro, which was a single off one of his, I forget which album it was back in 2006. I forget the name of it, but just like that like purring like guitar at the beginning of it that kind of just continues through and drives the song is great. And so often I found myself just being like, Maggie's gonna definitely end this song in just kind of like some like nice way. And she just usually like goes to like a little bridge and then builds right back up to this really like driving ending to a lot of these songs, which I really loved. Um, yeah, you hit on most of my favorites there, but I really don't know if there's like a track I like dislike on here. I
Mhm.
guess maybe songs like "Begging for Rain" are like some of my least favorites, just because they're a little bit more toned back. Um, a little bit more of her like her in a past life type Maggie, but man, I don't know. There's a lot of great stuff. Symphony might be some of her best songwriting on this whole thing, and it's not even a track I found myself going back to a lot. Just really strong. Shout out to Florence Welch singing backup vocals for her on
Mm.
Shatter. I mean, it's a great look right there,
Overqualified for sure.
for sure. Um, yeah, what'd you think of Be Cool?
uh, Be Cool. I don't really remember much about Be Cool. What stood
It's
out to you about that one?
sorry, yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot there, but it's definitely stood out to me just because it's so like it's still drum driven, but it's pretty much just the drums and Maggie's voice and some synths. and she sings it like so beautifully. That like chorus, so be cool. And I just really like loved her vocal performance on that one. And I was trying to like put my finger on what influence I could hear in that one, and it feels like it's like right at top of mind, but I just can't unlock it. So I was kind of hoping you might have had a comparison, but we'll come back to it if we can think of it. Anything else on this though?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the drums on this thing. Shatter. The snares sound really good on that one. Up
Hmm.
tempo song in general. One of the more up tempo songs she has here. Um, yeah, I think overall the production, the instrumentation probably grabs me more, and her performance itself probably grabs me more than the lyrics themselves. And that was also the case with her in the past life, an album that I didn't think had much fat or filler on it at all. It's just really cool to see her basically do the same kind of thing, just with a completely different sound. And
Yeah.
I mean, she seems so confident on this. I'd have to imagine this is the kind of lane she feels most inspired to. Then again,
Hmm.
the kind of raw emotion that a lot of these songs have also directly feel like they came out of a COVID creation. So maybe this is just a moment in time for Maggie, TBD. Only 28. So we'll hopefully the next album is in 3.5 years from now, a little sooner, we
Yeah.
hope. But either way, definitely making good on all the hype that she had in 2016.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe just the last song I wanted to highlight before we wrap up is "That's Where I Am" because that really feels like a great bridge. If you really liked old Maggie like the stuff on Her in a Past Life, old Maggie Rogers, Her in a Past Life 3 years ago, and current Maggie album on Surrender, that's like the bridge to me because there's so much of that production where it's like clicks and just kind of like pulling sounds in, pulling them back out really quickly, but it really uses some of that new production, that heavier drum, that heavier guitar, and allows her to just like use everything that she does well to uh, really make a great song. So definitely recommend this. We're putting a song or two on our nostalgia best of 2022. But Dave, most artists that were going to drop albums this weekend, other than Maggie Rogers, cleared out for the Queen and Beyonce. Whenever she drops an album, the world stops, but usually she doesn't tell us about it. Usually she just drops it and lets us make sense of it. Uh, she made it known that Renaissance was coming. We got at least one single. I think we might have gotten two, but at least we got one.
Yeah.
Um, her seventh solo album, Act One of a trilogy. Is this the album of the year?
Renaissance is fucking amazing, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Beyonce smashed it, dude.
Yeah.
Uh, did not expect it to be so layered, have so many reference points, so referential and reverent to its influences in the way it is. But it very well could be the career highlight of Beyonce as well, which is quite the statement, quite the accomplishment for an artist who made Lemonade,
Yeah.
which is just like amazing personal uh, tome statement. Renaissance it's not as overtly political as some of her recent stuff.
Hmm.
Think of like Black is King and her performances at like Coachella and things like that. She's seems to have, I think, kind of dialed back into a more specific cultural point here. It's not that it's not political. It's just it's more subtextual now.
Hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I was just kind of really blown away with just how many of these songs I think are just really awesome to revisit, but still fit into this amazing like painting that she's delivered. And yeah, it's also wild that this is her first traditional album rollout since Four came out in 2011. Break My Soul, a traditional single, came out over a month ago.
So good.
She joined TikTok. Uh, it's just it's cool that Beyonce switched up how she's doing things. But then when you actually go to the music and like, oh wait, no, she's still fucking running shit, dude. Like
Yeah.
it's a really impressive album.
Yeah, there was a story going around that I don't quite believe, but Drake is, I think, given a credit on one of these songs. I don't remember which one. And supposedly, when he
It's a
went
lot
to
of
go,
credits, so you gotta
oh,
dig.
he does have a few credits, I guess. But when he went to go like work on this with Beyonce, he like heard what she was working on, and that's when he supposedly named his album uh honestly never mind, because
Mm.
apparently the story goes he heard what Beyonce was working on, was like, I can't compare to this, and obviously making a similar like dance album, this just blows his out of the water. And
Drake is credited on "Heated" as his Boy Wonder.
heated, gotcha. So it's, I think whether that story is true or not, I'd like to believe it is. I don't really think it is though. It is just a testament to just how amazing of a job Beyonce did here, just taking a sound that she never has really even dabbled in all that much. Obviously, she's made some like tracks that have dancier sound to it, dancier elements, but this is a pure dance homage to so many different elements and styles of dance music. You know, you got disco, you have like classic EDM and pop, you have more like grimy sounding dance near like the end of the album, more rap
Yeah.
infused. It's really impressive and she kills it. I saw another person talking about how like she's only got a few features on this. She has a ton of samples, a bunch of like high level producers working with her on this, but it almost feels like there's like multiple Beyoncés on this album because she's just
Mm.
constantly changing her voice, changing the way that she's singing or delivering, or even going about like uh, rapping at points. And it's just
Yeah.
really, really impressive to see her kind of mold this all together and create an album that, even when you have listened to a song numerous times, it feels like it always takes you in a new direction. And it's just always like, how the hell did she conceptualize this? It's just
Mm.
really, really impressive. Uh, Blown away to say the least.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot's been said before Drake, but especially since Drake released Honestly Nevermind, where the desire for people to listen to dance music at this time, feeling of returning to the club and having a collective experience hasn't
Mm,
happened in a long time. Feels like a natural product of the pandemic, and like this is like this the expression in this way. But I think Beyonce takes it even a step further beyond just our current time, because this album is so indebted to just the really grand and long tradition of queer uh, culture and community that has been fostered in dance halls for decades. And there's a long history of divas and icons being these huge touch points and rallying points as artists for people in the queer community,
mhm,
dating back again decades, ever since, Diana Ross, for example,
mhm,
kind of becoming a gay icon and helping people get through the AIDS crisis through her music when she started writing music more directed to these fans of hers, right? Beyonce is taking all of that in and paying direct homage and paying people that she's sampling or working with that are from these communities as well, not famous artists at that. And I think kind of bringing it all together, it's really cool to see an artist of Beyonce's stature, Beyonce's fame, Beyonce's wealth still have so much tact and reverence for this specific community that is a part of her success and
mm.
career, but she actually put in the work to like show that love and be really, I think, genuine in her appreciation for this very varied music. Like you said, we're talking about many genres right now, but I think that's really where like the subtext of this music comes from, where again, it's not as in your face as like Formation when she performs at the Super Bowl, but
Mhm.
it's not that it has any less meaning. It's just a different way to understand and hear that message.
Yeah, she might be one of the most thoughtful artists in terms of conceptualizing the story that she wants to tell with her art. Some of her recent work, you think about Lemonade, like you talked about, perhaps one of the most thoughtful uh, albums talking about a very public issue with her husband that you know very easily could have been made into a just a pure breakup album, or like a I hate my husband type album. but really like beautiful messages about love, black love, for like what it means to forgive, what it means to move forward with someone after they've hurt you. Homecoming, the live album, the way that she centered that with the an HBCU marching band and really worked in these elements of black culture into this live performance and the video with it, and her performance at Coachella, all of it incredible. And then you get this, like you said, just so thoughtful towards the LGBTQ community and these people who have been allies or been within the community, and the art that they've made to help them or support them is just really wonderful and just elevates her beyond this person who makes amazing music but is also a thoughtful and impressive artist in that sense. You know, there's so much to like here. You mentioned the single "Break My Soul." I think that's a clear one of my favorites. It's also a bit cheating when you sample, "Show Me Love" and
Yes.
"Explode" on that one as well, as a nice sample as well.
Right.
But what are some other songs on this that you just immediately loved on first listen?
Yeah, it is funny to like and we talked about this when people talked this when "Break My Soul" came out over a month ago, but like it's just so funny to hear the Robin S. "Show Me Love" sample again after we just heard Charlie XCX do
Yeah.
it on "You Used to Know Me" just a few months ago. But I actually looked into it more. That Robin S. song, specifically the remix, that is the most famous version of it. That has actually been officially sampled like over 100 times too.
Yeah,
It's just an amazing synth line at the end
it's
of the day.
incredible.
People know this stuff. So yeah, "Break My Soul," great choice for a single. It's
Hmm.
currently at number 7 on Billboard, and if you think about it, Beyonce actually hasn't had a number one single since "Single Ladies" back in 2008, a solo
That's
number
insane.
one. Uh, I think "Break My Soul" perhaps could get there next week
Mhm.
following this album coming out. I would certainly root for that. She deserves it. Uh, for me though, my obvious highlight is "Cuff It." I think that song is so fucking good. But I
Great
mean, I
one.
liked a ton of these songs really.
Yeah, Cuff It is really strong. What did you like about it? I mean, that's got a real, like, disco-y feel to me.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's just a imminently danceable disco song. You know, the horns come
Mhm,
in there, but there's like these just so many flourishes throughout the song. You know, like there's times where the background vocals come in and they harmonize with Beyonce. It sounds really good. Then like
mhm.
verse 3, she's kind of doing like a hip hop cadence. Got me acting hella thoughty. Like it's it's fucking really good. I think it's just really catchy song, and like really uplifting. It's like it's kind of like exactly what she's going for with this album overall, as a song like that. And I think that clearly could be like a wedding staple, a song like that.
Mhm. Yeah, totally. I immediately loved Cuff It. It just makes you wanna move, and like you said, there's some flourishes. There's, like, a way that they toned the bass on that one where it sounds almost just, like, surreal, like, it's like this, like, wiggle. It's really strange, but I love it. Um my immediate, like, favorite track listening through was Virgo's Groove, which is
Mm,
kinda similar, but just, like, it's just this, like, pulsating disco jam
bit more
that,
funky, disco funky.
yes, very funk, and it, like, just continues to build and become more and more intense, and, like, the guitar you think is gonna, like, give you a break at some point, and then the last, like, minute or so, just, like, Beyonce just, like, showing out with her vocals, dude. And she's harmonizing with those backup singers. It's just like pure perfection. Is that everything I was hoping to get out of an album once I knew what the general vibe was? What other tracks do you like?
Yep, I liked Church Girl. I think, speaking of samples, and again, you really should just read a guide about the samples. There are so many. There's so many
Yes.
reference points and influences on this, but also direct samples. One of them is on Trigger Man, on Church Girl, which would be Trigger Man, another one of the most famous and often sampled songs. This case, it's more about touchdown from Southern hip hop. But Church Girl is really funny because you have like the gospel coming in, you have the lyrics, but it's a bit more ratchet than you expect. And
She gets
in
ratchet on
general,
this album.
this is a hornier, more overtly sexual Beyonce
Yes.
album lyrically than we've gotten perhaps ever. I like that one. I mean, there's just so many songs. Like I think "Cozy" is an awesome club song. Pure Honey, another one. The more
Hmm.
'90s sample there. Uh, Summer Renaissance, another disco jam. Like you mentioned Virgo's Groove. Um, You have Energy, which was in the news for the Kellis sample that Kellis didn't approve of, but
Hmm.
I think that one, the Cuff It into Energy transition, sounds really good. Um, Alien Superstar is another one that I enjoyed. You know,
Yeah.
Grace Jones is actually featured on this, and she's clearly a reference point for some of the other songs that precede it. Shout out Thames being featured here as well, having that big
Yeah.
song with Drake and Future, now on the Beyonce album. Her debut album is hotly anticipated, to say the least. You know,
Yep. It's it's just really impressive. You hit most of the songs I like the most. I think probably Pure Honey was one of my other like standouts on this. But like I think what I really love about that and what it encapsulates so well is with so many of these tracks, it takes you in so many different directions. Pure Honey kind of starts off as this like really like you said like horny but just like I don't know, slimy type sounding groove, and then halfway through, it just kind of like moves into this like more like I don't even know, like disco-y, funky, like glimmery type feel, but keeping those same lyrics. And then she starts singing. Like she just comes out of nowhere and just is like hitting the high notes. And I was just like, man, I just had no idea where a lot of these songs were gonna go. And for them to also have them all flow into each other and feel so cohesive as a work. I mean, she even like leads you into the album in terms of energy from I'm That Girl to Cozy, which are a little bit more low energy, into like Alien Superstar and Cuff It, where the energy really gets moving. It almost felt like a power hour at points, right? This is about an hour long. It's just kind of like insane how she was able to craft something so layered, like you said before. So there's a lot on here, man. Really loved it. And I thought Summer Renaissance was a great way to just like hammer home everything. Supposedly, this is the first of a trilogy that we're getting. How much credence you put into that?
yeah. Well, it may not be as traditional as we expect. Of course, Lemonade had the accompanying film, and Black is King and Homecoming were more atypical releases as well. So I'm sure there is an act two in some fashion. Whether that means she makes another traditional album in a year or two, I'm less sure about that part. What I am sure about is that we're going to have a good old fashioned Grammy bloodbath next year, Beyonce versus Adele for album of the year, among other things. Just like the last time they released albums, and the discourse will be hot for that one. I think we all know that already.
Um, yeah, I could if I had to like pick right now or like make a guess. I think album of the year feels pretty locked up for Beyonce, but I could see Adele maybe getting a record of the year for like Easy on Me or something like that, right? That
Right.
feels like if we had to split it, let's do that.
Yeah, I think so. Beyonce probably will benefit from releasing uh, after Adele,
Yeah.
significantly after, right? Adele basically came out like right
At
at
the
the
last
start of
Grammys.
this Grammy year. So
Yep.
we'll talk about that more when the nominations talk happens in the fall. But yeah, I mean, this is the first Beyonce solo album since 2016, which means the only two people left on 2016 watch would be Rihanna and Frank Ocean, which just been so long for both of them. And there had been rumors of, who can really say how accurate, but there had been rumors that the next Frank Ocean album would be dancey as well. Frank, of course, has been an admirer and participating in club culture for a while now. If Frank gave us a club record of some kind, not even necessarily this year, but just that's what he did, I please, man, just please do it.
We know he has it in him with Pyramids, so would love to hear it. Don't hold your breath though on either one of those albums. Uh,
I know.
I, Rihanna, actually, I was listening on Spotify, and after the album wrapped up for Beyonce, Rihanna came on, and I was just like, man, we need some more Rihanna music in our
I
lives.
know.
So love to hear it from her.
I would also love her husband to drop some music too. Or
Yeah.
her baby dad, whatever. Would love Rocky to drop, but we'll settle for just Rihanna for now.
Anyways, follow our Nostalgia Best of 2022 to keep up to date with all the music that we like. We're gonna switch gears to TV, where we're talking Paper Girls on Amazon Prime. Uh, Dave, how many episodes you get to with this? Just the
I
first
only
couple?
saw the first episode of Paper Girls.
Hmm.
Season one is out on Prime Video in full right now. The long-awaited Brian K. Vaughan comic adaptation, and we talked about Brian K. Vaughan before because his other comic series was adapted last year on FX, The Last Man on Earth. So, not our first time visiting him. He's a very accomplished, prolific comic writer. But Paper Girls finally came out after some COVID hiccups with production. And you've seen more than the first episode, correct?
Yeah, I've seen half the series to this point.
Right.
And I gotta say, after the first episode, I wasn't totally drawn into Paper Girls, but I wanted to stick with it because I thought there was a lot of potential. And, I think for me, you get Ellie Wong right at the beginning of the first episode, and I'm like, huh, I like Ellie Wong. What's going on here? And then pretty quickly, we're with the kids, and it feels like we're back into like a Stranger Thing esque type world. Uh, there's so much mystery and unexplained around the first couple of episodes that it's kind of hard to stick with for me. And I also didn't really love being with the kids. But once the kids start teaming up with some of the adults and exploring what it means to be going through this time travel world, I thought the show started to take off a bit more. So it definitely is a show that picked up for me. There were certainly some points in the last episodes that I saw that I still had was like scratching my head and wasn't totally caught by. But I think there's if you stick with it, you get a little bit more payoff. What'd you think after the first episode, though?
Yeah, well, I think it did a pretty good job at establishing our core characters here, our Paper Girls, um, and I think it does enough to differentiate itself from the kind of obvious rote comparison that it's like, oh, this is like Stranger Things, female Stranger Things, taking
Right.
place in 1988. We literally see them all on bikes,
Hmm.
period setting. But it's not as like overtly referential to retro stuff like Stranger Things, and it's not as like genre heavy, or at least it's just more like strictly sci-fi. There's like not a horror occult element, like the
Hmm.
Stranger Things villains aspect. So it's still genre, but I think our four Paper Girls are established at least in an archetypal way early on. It's like, okay, I see what we're doing here, but did you feel like the momentum continued right into episode two? Because it felt like the kind of like strong setup pilot you established what the show is, this time travel
Hmm.
uh, element, how they're going to get back to their time, interfacing with their future selves, this future timeline,
Yeah.
Do you feel like the momentum continued after that setup, or did it kind of grind and get into, oh, we got 8 episodes to fill?
you know, I found the least enjoyable part of the show to be the stuff around the mystery and the time travel and like who are these people and uh as they start to like discuss like what the actual plot is, how there's these I forgot what they were, like the STF who are like in the future, but then there's the other more rich people who are trying to stop the STF who are further in the future.
Hmm.
It's
Time cops.
yeah, the it's all very convoluted, and I just found that to be so not enjoyable. Stuff I liked was seeing Ali Wong as Aaron interacting with 13-year-old 12-year-old Aaron. I thought that stuff's really interesting, kind of seeing these children dealing with themselves or their family members in the future. I thought was really interesting and really fun, especially when Mac goes to find her brother. That episode, which I think is episode 3, I just found to be really enjoyable, and I thought Sophia Rosinski was giving a really strong performance in that one. But man, there's a CGI moment in I think it's the end of episode 4 into episode 5 that I just was like really put off by. I didn't think it was very good at all, and just also like I don't want to spoil things for people too much, but like it just felt kind of cheesy in a sense. Like I don't. It probably is true to the comic, but just the way it was executed didn't feel that great. Um, I do think Sakai Ebeni, who is adult Tiffany, but I believe is also like the villain in this, is really. I think she's really convincing as a villain, and I think a very hateable face. But man, I think if I didn't want to bring the content to the people, I might not have stuck with this show. So I think give it a few episodes, see where you're at after episode 3, and then see if you can look past some of less fine points of it. Would be my recommendation.
Yep, I hear you. I feel like you kind of wanna do some genre stuff to
Hmm.
watch this right now. I wasn't really necessarily in the mood. I think Steppenwall pointed this out, where it's like kind of unfortunate that Paper Girls comes out post Stranger Things, even though the comic itself actually predates Stranger
Yeah.
Things. But it's just the and the last Why the Last Man is the same kind of thing, where it predated The Walking Dead, but The Walking Dead beat it to the screen, and the comparison points, the wires get crossed there in terms of how people perceive things. So not necessarily fair to Paper Girls, but that's just kind of how it goes sometimes, I guess.
Yep, just how the cookie crumbles. But Paper Girls, maybe a show we'll get back to if it feels worthwhile. I'm not sure, but we are going to be returning to Industry. Oh yeah, season 2 dropping, and man, it's weird. We talked about Industry, I guess, just last year, right? Or
End of
maybe 2 years
2020.
ago. Yeah. This is one of those COVID shows where it's like, where was I, and how do I
Mhm.
know delineate time during this period? But uh, it feels like Industry is far away, and also like just came off the air at the same time. So to have it back, I was like, oh, this is great. I miss being with these characters. Um, and I thought episode 1 of season 2, the premiere, was just really great and set the stage for everything, and really is pulling all these characters in different directions. And I'm right back in. What about you?
Oh, totally. I was a huge fan of Industry season one, which really came out of nowhere as this gem from HBO and BBC. And what I think is most appealing about Industry, which continues from season one, is that it's really like atmospheric and absorbing show to be with. And I think the big part of that is just because Mickey Down and Conrad K, the creators, are coming from this finance world, and it's a show that, through its storytelling, is quite uncompromising. It doesn't take time to expositorily explain the jargon of the
Hmm.
finance and investment banking world. It's quite fast paced. It's quite high minded in that regard. But the vibe, the character dynamics, the character motivations, the feelings of the characters are so relatable and understandable that even if this very intricate world is only understandable to a niche audience, by design, most people don't understand the nuances of high finance. It's okay, because the things that are in here, in terms of the stress and the toxicity of the workplace and the balancing of work and fun, the drugs, the sex, everything, like it's just a wonderful blend to be with. And I actually love that I don't really know this world, because it feels like you're just going on a trip and learning more about it. I think Myala Harold, who plays Harper Stern, our lead protagonist, really stands out as the one kind of guiding us through this world, and going through her many ups and downs through season one was quite the trip. You know, um, the backstabbing nature of the show. I've seen a lot of people doing it. It's like Succession meets Euphoria. It's not quite as cutthroat as Succession, but not that far off, and
Yep.
not as explicit as Euphoria, but not that far off. It makes some sense.
No, I think that comparison makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I think what I was just most impressed by as we come back, and obviously as season 2 ends, there's a lot of drama and infighting among the core characters. Everybody's kind of off in their own directions, but everybody's storyline I just find to be really compelling. Obviously, you have Harper. You just mentioned Harold's lead performance in this,
Mhm.
who's dealing with COVID anxiety, COVID stress, hasn't been back to the office since COVID, has been living in this hotel in London during this time, and the tension that causes with, was it Rashi is his name? The
Rishi, yes.
Rishi, and some of the other people on the floor. You have Yaz, played by Marisa Abella, who, first of all, like there are actresses sometimes, and actors too, who, like, when they're on screen you just feel like sexual tension constantly, and she's able to do that. It's just like
Yeah.
unbelievable how, like, no matter what's going on screen, she just is able to, like, delivers so much force through her nonverbal communication. It's unbelievable, and everything going on with her, she seems like a bit lost, a bit like kind of considering her next options, and also dealing with losing this big client, feeling,
Yeah.
I think anger towards the way that she was treated versus how now the culture has shifted a bit towards some of the newer people and the roles
Right.
she was in, which I think is really fascinating to see that dynamic. And then you got uh Bob Robert, right, who
Yeah.
is like, he last season was like the hot shot, like, up and comer, wanted to like take over the world, and now he's kind of on like desk, like cold call duty, and uh seeing all these dynamics where all these characters are at, and also obviously all the stuff going on in his sex life, and
Yep.
it's just really interesting, really fascinating to see them all, and where they're at. And then, we haven't even talked about Ken Leung, who plays Eric in this, but
Oh gosh. Yeah.
I think his performance, you can just kind of see like how he's been muzzled by a lot of the abuse he was giving out last season and the way that the companies responded to it. But his performance is just so convincing because you can tell that he's like still got that fire underneath him, still got that dog in him, so to speak. But he is just playing this like manager role now and taking it so seriously and really like putting himself into this other aspect of his career. I just was really like immersed in this whole episode.
Totally. I think from a plot perspective, it's cool to see like the Pierpoint London office face this kind of existential challenge, existential threat, which is that this guy coming in from New York is going to be on the desk there and basically spying on them, determining what's going on. But also, there's just this threat that the London office could be like subsumed or become subservient to New York or even Frankfurt, they say post Brexit, Um, that is a cool piece of ongoing tension. I like that the show is, I think, intelligently bringing in post COVID or, post outbreak uh, storyline to this
Mhm.
season. Harper had been working from home much longer than the rest of her colleagues and doing it at a hotel at that. And how that leads into everything, we'll see about that. Um, you mentioned Ken Lung. I think the Eric character is so central, I think, to bringing out the high stakes tension and stress that is investment banking, and his dynamic with Harper, which is so up and down, uh, is really fascinating. I think it's just really
Yeah.
good chemistry between these two performances, and it's the best part about the show. You just love being with it. And
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, and you mentioned Yaz and Robert. It's cool to see like Harper. They're directly kind of continuing where they are with the storylines we saw last season. Even though it's been like year's time in the show, we're starting to see issues with Yaz's personal life affecting her professional life, and
Mhm.
Robert's personal life is now being affected by his previous choices in terms of his party habits and stuff, right? And
Yep.
now we have this Jay Duplass character
Yeah.
coming in as this hotshot investor that is like untouchable to all the banks, and that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how that dynamic plays out between Eric and Harper and Bloom, played by J. Duplass, like you mentioned. I think I think there's a real like fatherly aspect, as you could kind of see when Bloom, uh, you know, says to Robert when he's bringing Harper home after a night out, like, "Hey, I'm right here. Like, don't try anything. I'm listening through the wall to hear if anything goes on." And obviously, Eric and Harper already have that dynamic, so I think there's going to be the business side of things. Obviously, we see Harper choose not to pursue a business meeting that she has set up with Eric at the end of the episode in order to go listen to
Yes.
Bloom's talk and pursue whatever opportunities come there. But I'm really interested to see how that all plays out for sure. And you have Yaz with this opportunity of like investment or wealth management, I guess, is like the
Yeah.
opportunity. I was a little confused by exactly what that woman did, but
Right.
um, really interesting
So
stuff.
is Yaz for most of
Y-
the episode.
Yeah. But yeah, it feels like industry just hasn't missed a beat. It's one of those shows that I feel like will, if people haven't found it yet, people will continue to find, and as long as it just keeps going, man, I think by the end people are gonna call this one of the better HBO shows of recent memory. So
Yeah, I agree.
why don't we switch gears from HBO and TV to movies, where Not Okay on Hulu dropped this past week. Uh, Dave, was this movie better than okay to you?
That's a good question. I really wanted to talk about Not Okay just because it's been a light movie summer, bro. There hasn't been a lot of movies worth discussing. And when you get a Fox Searchlight movie handed to you via Hulu, you might as well check it out because they have a good track record. And they've actually been doing that a lot this year. We talked about Fresh with Sebastian Stan and Daisy Edgar Jones, but we didn't talk about Fire Island or Good Luck to You, Leo Grande, Emma Thompson movie. So Searchlight via Hulu has been giving us a steady bit of batch of movies this year so far, which is cool to see, I guess. And the latest is Not Okay, which is a satirical comedy starring Zoe Deutsch. And I went into it not really knowing what to expect. But I think it's an interesting movie for how it approaches its story. But yeah,
Mm.
does it exceed beyond being okay? Probably not, honestly, but I think the fact that it's at least a bit atypical in the type of storytelling it is something to admire. And I think Zoe Deutsch is very convincing as this character. She's honestly been really good ever since Set It Up blew up on Netflix several years ago with Glenn Powell. I think she's a really winning performer. In this case, she's playing a not winning character, but I think it just kind of speaks to her talent. She's quite charismatic.
Yeah, I agree. I think Zoe Deutsch is really good in this role. I thought the movie was definitely effective in hammering home the cringiness of people who pursue fame without for the wrong reasons, I guess, was kind of
Yeah,
what it was driving home about. And I think more than anything, I walked away from this movie not only impressed with Deutsch's performance, but also Mia Isaac, who can't recall seeing in anything before,
no,
but I thought she was just really strong as Rowan in this.
kind of
And
a stand-in for some of those survivors of the Parkland shooting that became activists.
yes,
That type of character archetype.
and I thought the setup of the movie was really clever. And you just kind of see her continue to like lean into the lie, and you're just like, oh god, like why are you doing this? Oh no, like you just know it's gonna turn bad at some point. And I mean, there's certain things that I definitely could have done without. The whole like Colin Dylan O'Brien like stuff was like a little like it was funny. Like I thought he was really funny in this like douchebag
Yeah,
role, basically. But also just kind of left me wondering like what was this trying to say.
mm,
And the
yeah,
movie definitely ends at a point where it's trying to say something. I just don't know if it totally lands the plane on it. Um, but overall, I thought this movie was okay.
yeah. This kind of reminded me of Mainstream, that Gia Coppola movie with Andrew Garfield we talked about in
Mm,
2020, where it's a movie trying to like say something about young like Gen Z culture specifically
yeah.
and not totally nailing it. I think this has a more accurate read on like just how those things work, you know. And I think probably the best aspect about Not Okay is that the way it ends, it doesn't redeem uh Danny Sanders, Zoe Deutsch's character. It
Yes.
doesn't redeem Danny and like let her off the hook really in any way at all, which
Mhm.
is kind of the big flaw of Dear Evan Hansen,
Right.
as people would say. You know, it's like Danny is a scammer. She literally admits it at the end that she didn't really learn anything from this. And
Mhm.
in on the other hand, it is a bit difficult to be with this character that you don't like immediately, and you see how oblivious or tone deaf she is about various things, right? Across just having whether it's opinions or privilege or whatever it is, right? You pick up on that all immediately, and then this character actually has no growth at all for the most part,
Yeah.
and you're kind of stuck sitting with that and thinking about like what that is and what you're supposed to feel about that. And that's what I meant by like the kind of like atypical storytelling of not okay, because it's not often that you be with a unlikable protagonist and they don't redeem themselves in any manner like this. It is supposed to be satirical and make you think about that. But do you think it like goes far enough with that? Because when we see the influencer party, when we see everything with Dylan O'Brien, like I don't know, like I feel like you kind of get the take, you get the lampooning like immediately, right? And then after that, like I don't know, I guess you're just kind of on for the ride. Maybe you don't have to think about it too deeply.
Yeah, I watched it with a group of people, and at the end, everybody was just kind of like, "That's it." And I think that's kind of how I felt. Like it could have gone a little bit further, and that's why I don't know if it totally landed the plane. I really thought the spoken word piece at the end was really strong, but the movie almost ends like so abruptly that it's like you it asks the audience to do a little bit more work. Um, and I don't know. I definitely got the message and really liked that it wasn't just like her like walking away crying and like we don't see her like learn anything. We're just like, oh, she's just always going to be like this. But I also just don't know if it felt fully like baked in terms of how it was trying to get the message across. I do also feel like this like I guess it's supposed to be like a what like up rocks like BuzzFeed environment.
Yes, Vice
Like
perhaps. Distractify is the name.
yeah, it's this
Sorry, no, not Stratify. That's a real thing. Depravity.
depravity,
Yeah.
yeah. Distractify actually almost would have been better, I think. It's this like similarly, like kind of like half baked. Like you have like these people there who at the beginning are like, "We're going to an LGBTQ night and you can't come." Like obviously just not liking her, but like they're like kind of setting these characters up around there, but none of them ever really get to do much except for Colin, who's like the douchebag on screen talent. And
Yep.
and I guess not. I don't know if her name is Nadia. Nadia Alexander is the actress who approaches her and is like gonna out her lie. Like, but none of them are fully formed beyond
Yeah.
that. And I don't know.
I also thought the portrayal of a Vice BuzzFeed S workplace was a bit 2015,
Yeah.
whereas like it was almost like combining like tech company office with
Mm,
online journalism, which is actually just not that accurate anymore
mm.
if you understand the unfortunate economics of journalism these days. Like this actually doesn't feel like a real
Right.
a real work environment at all actually.
Yeah.
um Nonetheless, I think still at least makes you think a little bit. You get a Rico Nasty drop over some kickball. You get Avril Lavigne sing along. Like I said, Zoe Deutsch very likable. Dylan
Hmm.
O'Brien has many stands. Those people were happy. Even got my guy Karen Sony in a very thankless role as Danny's fellow photo editor at the office. He's like only a few lines, but yeah, just all right, I guess. And I wonder what the Searchlight strategy is since becoming owned by Disney and the Fox deal. This year they've released some stuff on Hulu, and obviously, I guess this is the stuff they acquire but don't expect to be awards contenders, so they put it out earlier in the year via Hulu. Just a new strategy, I guess. But hey, I mean, like I said, there hasn't been a whole lot of movies of note past few months, so we gotta talk about them
Nope.
when we get them.
Yep. Exactly. I think that's gonna wrap it up for today, though, Dave. I don't really have any more thoughts on this. What do we got for next week?
So next week we actually do have some movies of note, thankfully.
Hey.
In theaters, we have Bullet Train, the Brad Pitt action movie from David Leitch,
Mm.
which I'm very excited about. And then we have a bunch of other stuff coming out on streaming all at the same time. So most notably would be on Hulu, Prey, the Predator prequel from Dan Trachtenberg, which is getting really well received. We also have Apple's first foray into animation with Skydance Animation via Luck, which happens to be the comeback of John Lasseter since he left Pixar. A lot going on there. And then on Amazon Prime Video, we have 13 Lives, the Ron Howard movie about the uh, I believe it was Thailand, the cave rescue over in Asia a few years ago, and the race against time. A lot of big name actors in that one. Very exciting. And also a trio of notable music drops. Calvin Harris, his first album in a while, Funkwave Bounces Volume 2. Uh,
Yeah.
K-pop, Girls' Generation, their comeback after several years hiatus. And then on the Afrobeat side of things, Fireboy DML, who is not as big as Burna Boy, but still a really huge artist out of Nigeria who I like quite a bit. So I think a lot of interesting stuff coming out this year before August goes more or less very quiet.
Yeah. I'm glad we have some stuff to talk about. We're a few weeks away from some major TV, which will buoy us for a bit, but it's always nice to have a couple movies pop up. So hit the subscribe on youtube.com/nostalgiapod. Go to our Twitter at nostalgiapod. Follow the link tree there to find the podcast in any format you want. And again, go to Spotify and search Nostalgia Best of 2022 and follow our playlist there. Catch you next week.